Do you want to take our vehicle?
Let's roll.
Hi, and welcome to Ultimate Explorer. I'm Lisa Ling. Tonight we're going back to war-torn Baghdad to investigate the whereabouts of one of the world's greatest lost treasures. It's called the Treasure of Nimrud, almost 175 pounds of ancient gold jewelry and artifacts over 2,500 years old. These remarkable jewels were put on display for a brief period of time more than 10 years ago, but have been missing from public sight ever since. Just how important are they? Well, their original discovery was considered one of the most significant archaeological finds since the discovery of King Tut's tomb nearly a century ago. Now their very existence is in doubt. Were they casualties of war destroyed by the bombing of Baghdad, or have they been spirited away by Saddam and his henchmen? Join us as we try to solve the mystery of Iraq's lost treasures. Like most Americans, on March 19, 2003, I was glued to images of Baghdad under fire. I'd actually been to Baghdad in the mid-1990s, but nothing I saw then prepared me for this. Just 3 weeks later, and American tanks roll into the Iraqi capital. Scenes of triumph are replaced by images of chaos. Thousands take to the streets. The U.S. Army's 3rd Infantry Division isn't prepared for a citywide civilian crisis. For 8 days, the military fails to halt the looting. Suddenly, everything is up for grabs. Nothing is sacred. Not even the treasures of the Iraq Museum. Its looting provokes headlines all around the world.
This is the crime of the century, because the one who looted things from the museum, they did not loot them from our museum. They did not loot them from the Iraqi people. They stole these things from the whole mankind.
But for now, I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm here to meet filmmaker Jason Williams. He's got some exclusive videotape of one of the world's greatest treasures. It vanished almost 15 years ago in Iraq. So this is the infamous Treasure of Nimrud, huh?
This is the infamous Treasure of Nimrud, indeed. So this is the actual moment of discovery back in 1989 of the tomb of Queen Yabayam, 600 years before Cleopatra. These queens were the Cleopatras of the Assyrian world. One of the world's greatest treasures, 175 pounds of golden artifacts. It's kind of a mystery, you know, where is it? Who possesses it today?
Okay, so if you can, give me a value, an estimated value of this treasure.
You know what? These treasures are like the crown jewels inside the Tower of London. They simply do not have a worth that can be placed upon them. They are genuinely priceless. Rumor has it that, you know, these things were melted down after the First Gulf War. There's even a rumor that they were given by Saddam Hussein to one of his mistresses. We really don't know precisely where they are.
So to Baghdad.
To Baghdad, indeed.
It sounds like a great mystery, and I'm always up for one of those. Here I am, just 3 weeks since the fall of Baghdad, entering Iraq in search of the Treasure of Nimrud. And the risks are real. The next leg of our journey takes us 375 miles through some of the most hostile country on Earth. There's something about this treasure that makes it worth the risk. We're in Iraq now, and this is where the nervousness sort of starts to kick in, because over the course of 15 days, there were 11 incidents and 1 killing along this route. So hopefully we'll get there all safely. Traveling by convoy isn't optional, it's a must. Shells aren't blowing holes in the road anymore, but it still feels like the highway to hell. For 5 hours, we don't stop and we don't slow down. Finally, we get a little company out the window, and then we roll right into Baghdad. I'm eager to get on the trail of the treasure of Nimrud, but military checkpoints are everywhere, and it's serious business.
Come on out, so we can check real fast.
All right. Okay. What are you looking for?
Bombs, you know, that usual stuff.
Attacks on U.S. Army positions are a daily occurrence. By the time we make it to the Palestine Hotel, we're famished. But if you're thinking room service, forget it. I just want to show you our dinner. There's no electricity in the hotel tonight. I wonder if canned cheese will catch on in the States.
Canned cheese and canned potato chips. It's a survival diet.
The next morning, I go out and try and get my bearings. I was last here 7 years ago. Today, it's a very different place. I just want to give you an idea of what post-war Baghdad looks like these days. As you can see behind me, so many burned out tanks and rocket launchers, and in this area we have to watch where we're walking because there are a number of unexploded grenades on the ground. There's danger around every corner. Parts of the city still burn. But there are encouraging signs too. Life is resuming its pre-war pattern. New influences are creeping in. Old ones are erased. But if Saddam Hussein has lost his throne, what of the treasure of Nimrud, the jewel in his nation's crown? The first stop in my quest is the Iraq Museum. It's where the treasure of Nimrud was last seen in public 13 long years ago. I'm not alone. The National Geographic Society has sent a team of experienced archaeologists to Iraq. Led by Henry Wright of the University of Michigan, they're here to assess the post-war condition of the country's museums and archaeological sites, and then issue a call to action. With reports of continuing looting coming in from all around the country, the stakes are high. And nowhere more so than here at the Iraq Museum. And before the war, its collections were truly unique, a mirror not just to Iraqi culture, but to the entire history of human civilization.
In this museum, we had objects and material from about 500,000 years. You could witness the beginning of carving statues, you could witness the beginning of pottery, then the beginning of the civilization, the beginning of social life. You could witness all of that in this museum. And now parts of that are missing.
Donnie George is a 25-year veteran of the Iraq Museum. He invites our National Geographic team to inspect the damage firsthand.
A lot of slides from this room scattered.
We tour the devastation with him.
They broke in, just went and broke the doors. They came with hammers and everything.
We visit the administration building first.
All the rooms were like this.
The museum's records are not computerized. All its inventories and archaeological data are housed in filing cabinets and on index cards, or at least they used to be. The main exhibition galleries have also taken a beating.
The other one is gone. Some of these rosettes are gone. For me, this was the hardest moment in my life, to see such pieces that I loved so much. And I was always proud of these pieces of art of mankind, that we had them here. I really felt that I had a sharp cut in my heart, and I feel bleeding till now, really.
Working to a plan last used during the Gulf War of 1991, the museum's staff did everything they could to protect their museum's treasures. They removed the most precious items from display, but some were just too heavy to lift. Still, every available precaution was taken.
See, it's so interesting that this room, this is the Assyrian room, there were already sandbags and a lot of the pieces were already covered in foam before the war even started.
But the museum's curator's greatest fear, a missile strike, never materialized. Instead, it was their fellow countrymen who did the greatest damage.
Oh, that's that piece.
The head is a saleable item, but why to do this? To do this is just sheer vandalism.
The destruction has left the museum staff badly shaken. Donnie feels the American forces have a lot of explaining to do.
I talked to the man who was here when the looters were outside the premises of the museum. And he ran to an American tank and he begged them just to move the tank to protect the museum. But simply they said, we don't have orders.
The soldiers who guard the museum are the same guys Donnie George blames for allowing the looters to carry on unchecked. Their commanding officer, Captain Jason Conroy, sees it very differently.
There are people who say that not enough was done to protect the museum, that perhaps a tank or more should have been posted outside of the museum to protect it. How do you respond to that?
I mean, we were fighting a battle just to seize the intersection at the time. Like I said, this was being used as a military defensive position. All the buildings around it were being used as military defensive positions.
What would have happened if you had stationed a tank or multiple tanks around this area?
I mean, one tank, there's no way one tank could have come in here and held this ground. There were Saddam Fatahim in all the buildings around here, Special Republican Guard soldiers, and Ba'ath Party militia with anti-tank weapon systems, RPGs, and AK-47s shooting from all these buildings in this area.
There are no signs of forced entry.
It's not only the men of the 3rd Infantry Division who now call the museum home.
All along here we found parts of AK-47s.
Meet Colonel Matt Bogdanos, Golden Gloves winner, task force coordinator, and the assistant DA in Manhattan who tried to put P. Diddy away.
Now she can get up on the tank.
Matt is not your average Marine.
Chicken.
Wait, hold on.
Oh, that's great, isn't it?
Yeah.
Shokran? No, one.
If Matt didn't exist, the Pentagon would have had to invent him. That's because Matt has an MA in classical studies from Columbia University.
An individual fired an RPG.
The museum that once housed the treasure of Nimrud is now a crime scene. Matt's mission is to sort it out. His full job description: to find out what was stolen from the museum, alert Customs and Interpol to the losses, and yes, to recover them. His hand-picked team works and lives on site, along with an elite unit from Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Come back here. This is where U.S. investigators have sort of set up shop. They work and they live here. As you can see, all these cots set up. And they combine the efforts of the Army, Marines, Air Force, and Customs. It's a multi-agency task force. This is where it all happens. This is the nucleus.
Early press reports spoke of 170,000 objects missing. Matt's discovered this simply isn't true.
So have you determined what has been stolen?
Yes, we've determined, certainly from the public galleries they're walking through now, we have determined as conclusively as we can that there were 46 items originally missing from the public galleries. 9 of those have been recovered to date, so there are 37 items still missing from here. Thank you.
But Matt's not willing to call his investigation quits. He knows he still doesn't have the whole picture.
Please be careful, you are stepping on potentially thousands of years of history.
To enter this trashed room is to take a step deep into biblical time. These broken remains belong to one of the most famous objects ever excavated. It's the golden harp of Ur. Discovered in 1929, it was unearthed at the ancient city that, according to the Bible, was Abraham's home. Vandalized by looters, its gold bull's head has been stolen.
Inlaid gold and ivory. As you can see, it is now in several parts. The head itself is a copy.
Matt's learned the original head was removed many years ago. What he doesn't know is that it was last seen with the treasure of Nimrud, and that its present whereabouts remain a mystery. Matt's to-do list is about to get a whole lot longer. The crown jewels of Iraq are missing, and he needs us to help him find them. Thanks to a tip from Ultimate Explorer, Matt Bogdanis has joined the hunt for the greatest treasure ever discovered in Iraq.
Here we have pictures of the treasure of Nimrud.
These stunning objects once greeted visitors to the Iraq Museum, but for the last 13 years, their precise whereabouts has been a mystery.
The whereabouts of this treasure right now is not definitively known.
Clear, that's absolutely correct.
In fact, we've learned from our sources that the treasure may have been moved to a vault in the Central Bank of Iraq in the fall of 1990. When Matt suggests we scout the Central Bank together, we don't miss a beat. It's 105 degrees and getting hotter by the minute, but right now, it's Kevlar time. There are a lot of automatic weapons in Baghdad these days, and it's not just the good guys packing heat.
Let's roll.
Nobody, least of all Matt and his team, is taking any chances. And Matt's team is very serious. Counterterrorism specialists, they routinely operate in some of the most hostile of environments. Next stop, the Fort Knox of Iraq.
Which building did you come to? Okay.
Our guide is one of the last people to have seen the treasure of Nimrud. He's the museum official who took it to the bank. The bank looks as if it took a direct hit during the war. It's hard to imagine how the treasure of Nimrud could have survived. Every step is treacherous. Twisted steel joists and broken glass are everywhere. At any moment, falling debris could trap us, or worse. And then there's the money. It's everywhere. Hundreds of thousands of burned Iraqi dinars lie on the ground, reminders that not so long ago, this was Saddam Hussein's personal ATM. Venturing into the basement of an adjacent building, it's obvious the looters were here before us. Records are trashed. Doors forced.
So somebody was trying to break into it.
Okay.
It's pitch black, as you can see, and if you can look on the ground, everything is completely charred.
The air is foul from fire and smoke. I can't make out the ground beneath my feet.
Be careful, this is really slippery, guys. Hey, this is really slippery.
There we go.
Finally, we reach a vault.
Okay, we got a combination and a key.
But our source remembers a different-looking door.
The bank itself has 2 buildings.
We go back to scout the main building, the gutted one.
Let's take a look. How far? Let's take a look. I'm guessing they wouldn't have vaults down a spiral staircase.
Matt and Steve Muxari from ICE lead the way.
Steve, what's going on down here?
Well, I think this is at least 2 or 3 levels down from the area where we originally were. And there's an elevator shaft that's blown shut. So I would think that this is the stairway down to a deeper portion of the bank where vaults are at. Seems to make sense because it's right in the working portion of the bank.
Well, we've hit a dead end in our search. We hear that the treasure of Nimrud is here in the Iraqi Central Bank, but all that's left is this charred building and all this Iraqi money. We're at the bottom of a stairwell, and as you can see, there's a big flood. So one of the most important treasures in history could be down there. But for us today, this is where our search ends.
The challenge is immense, and not just because of the flooding. The central bank is a political minefield. This is going to take some time.
You sure the vaults were underground, not level?
While we're planning our next moves, I'm joining producer Jason Williams, plus archaeologists Tony Wilkinson and Mark Altawheel for a trip to the place where the treasure of Nimrud was found. Just as we're getting ready to leave, we get some bad news.
One of our fixers spoke with an accountant at the bank yesterday who says that Saddam didn't only take money 3 days before the war, but also took the treasures of Nimrud from the vault.
That is a real total disaster now.
Saddam Hussein still casts a shadow, even from the darkness of defeat.
They don't take it in the day. They coming, look at it and go. And in the night, 10 big truck take these things out of this bank.
And according to our fixer Halim, the former president is still very much alive.
And where is Saddam?
He's devil. He's everywhere.
When you've got the gold itself, you've got leverage, because he can use that against the world community to bargain his way into an advantageous position.
The rumor makes our mission seem even more urgent. Already, other thieves may be looting priceless artifacts from the site where the Nimrud treasure was found. Driving out of the capital, we pass reminders of the war that engulfed Iraq and the occupying power that's very much in evidence. War and occupation, they're enduring facts of life in this part of the world. 3,000 years ago, military might was also the key to superpower status, which is exactly why Saddam Hussein portrayed himself as a warrior from the past. One of the empires he tried to emulate? Assyria. The Bible called it a land bathed in blood. Its armies overwhelmed the entire Middle East, occupying Judea and almost destroying Jerusalem. For almost 300 years, the Assyrians were the world's sole superpower, and for much of that time, this was the site of their capital city, Nimrud. It's taken us 5 hours to get here from Baghdad, but it's worth the trip. At first, it's hard to imagine this was once a mighty city crowned by a ziggurat or pyramid. Time has not been kind to the Assyrian Empire.
From here it looks like I'm standing on a big pile of mud, but actually this is a pyramid. And unlike the Egyptians who built their pyramids out of stone, the Assyrians built theirs out of pure mud brick. So as you can see, it doesn't wear very well. But beneath me is the Palace of Nimrud, which was built in the 9th century BC, and the tombs of 4 Assyrian princesses are there, and that is where the treasure of Nimrud was found.
The treasure was shipped to Baghdad more than a decade ago. But Nimrud itself, like an outdoor gallery of priceless art, remains a draw for looters. Recently, a single Assyrian stone panel sold in London for $12 million. It's little wonder why the U.S. Army is here in force. Unfortunately, they didn't arrive soon enough. This is the ancient city that gave the treasure of Nimrud its name. Today, it's guarded by a unit of U.S. Army troops. Unfortunately, they were sent in only after a shootout between looters and guards.
We were told to come out here and guard the site.
Because there was some looting here.
Right, there was looting about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
This is locations of the stuff. I wanted to take points in here, like GPS points, so we could get this on a map, you know?
Right.
We could get some, document some real damage here, like in a more scientific way if possible.
Yeah.
Dr. Muzahem Mahmoud is the chief archaeologist at Nimrud. His voice breaks when he remembers the looting.
Yes. This pieces was looted. Thieves attach our guards, and by using weapons, stolen these pieces.
So this entire piece was removed?
Yes, covered this place.
Do you think they knew what they were?
Of course.
What
they
were
knew.
looking for?
Yeah, they knew.
Mark and Tony get to work. Their mission is to document the damage caused, not only by the recent spate of looting, but also by the economic neglect wrought by 12 years of sanctions. There's plenty of evidence to collect.
If you want to know how serious these looters are, just look at the spent bullet casings here. They're prepared to risk their lives, come in, have a gunfight, and you can see a bullet hole piercing the cuneiform text. So that has taken off a whole range of the cuneiform text there over an area about 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters. The shootout also involved the door. You can see the bullet holes in the door.
The looters came at midnight, armed with guns and tools to chisel off sections of the walls. A guard sleeping in a trailer was woken up by the commotion. He tried to scare them off by shooting into the air. Instead, he ended up in a firefight.
Then next thing you know, about 5 minutes later, he noticed some guys coming from up there, and they started shooting him from that area of the courtyard. So at that point, he was out of bullets. So he had to leave. And then that was when the other reliefs were, I assume, looted.
Fortunately, some of the bas-reliefs at the palace remain perfectly preserved. Windows into a world that vanished thousands of years ago.
This is where you actually get to see what they would have looked like, the clothing, you know, the actual footwear of these kings, you know, and the color, you know, adds life to it in some sense. I mean, you can start to imagine, you know, what this sort of surroundings, realizing this was actually very colorful.
400 years before Alexander the Great, the Assyrian court of Nimrud dazzled the world. It was here that kings and queens displayed their power and their finery. The wealthiest women wore fabrics adorned with tiny flowers of solid gold. And then there were the parties. One queen co-hosted a spectacular bash for almost 70,000 guests. It lasted for a week. None of these queens, nor any of their treasures, would have been known to us were it not for the sharp eyes of Iraqi archaeologist Muzahim Mahmoud. It's 1988. A team of Iraqi archaeologists makes the first in a series of astounding discoveries. Over the course of 3 digging seasons, they unearthed the final resting places of the queens of Nimrud. 175 pounds of solid gold bracelets, earrings, necklaces, even a crown are unearthed. A ring still adorns a finger bone. An amulet still encases the forearm of a long-dead queen.
When you first found this tomb and found the treasure of Nimrud, how did you feel?
I am very glad and surprised when I saw a lot of gold in front of my eyes. I cannot believe my eyes.
This is the first tomb I've ever been in.
I may not know where the treasure is, but I'm getting closer to understanding something of its power and importance.
Wow. This is pretty incredible. This is the sarcophagus, and her head was on this side, and apparently her body was adorned in gold jewelry. And this is where the curse was. So when you first found this tomb on the wall, it said, whoever finds this cannot touch the gold, otherwise he will be cursed.
Yeah.
You found it.
Yeah.
And removed it from the tomb.
And now I am in diabetic. Oh.
Instead of being cursed, Dr. Muzahim was rewarded with the discovery of a total of 4 royal tombs. The quality of the workmanship discovered here would not be matched for centuries. For Mark and Tony, this is just the first stop in a quick survey of archaeological sites in northern Iraq. The rest of the National Geographic team is also hard at work down south. Mark and Tony are staying on, but we need to return to Baghdad at once. The city is abuzz with politics and intrigue, and our search for the treasure of Nimrud is in constant danger of being derailed. In fact, what happens next is really quite amazing.
We've been given the authority to pump the bottom level of the bank, so we've rented this massive pump, and it's going to begin very soon.
It's not so easy. The big pumps turn out to be too big, so we trade them in for a smaller, more maneuverable sump pump.
Wow, this guy is wearing bare feet. What's he doing?
After a few false starts, we're in business. Well, almost. Okay, Jason, now you can smile.
Our crew is running back to check the water level because we really don't know how deep it goes down. We may have to do it all night long. We may have to do it for an hour. We'll have to just see.
We check the water levels constantly, but progress is agonizingly slow. As night falls, our pump keeps going. Another day for the troops guarding the bank. Another day for our pump operators. Another check on how we're doing.
Okay, so apparently they pumped for a couple of hours and we just wanted to see if the water had actually gone down. It has risen.
Now this was under the water and now it's exposed.
There's either a water main break or someone has opened a valve and is deliberately flooding the vaults.
So it could be river water coming in.
It could be, we don't know. It's not good news. So we pumped for 2 hours and we have reduced the water level by 0.
We're beginning to understand the full magnitude of what we're trying to do. There are 2 basement floors beneath us. Both are completely submerged. Looking for lost treasure in the central bank of Iraq is proving to be as difficult as finding the antiquities stolen from the Iraq Museum. But Matt Bogdanis, the Marine colonel in charge of investigating the museum looting, has had some lucky breaks.
Here we have some of my absolute favorite pieces. This is late 6th millennium BC, roughly 7,000 years old. This one here.
In fact, over 1,000 missing items have been returned. Turns out some of the looters weren't really looters at all.
One of the earliest freestanding statues, a Sumerian piece.
Instead, they deliberately took items from the museum to save them from the mob.
This is back also.
How did you get these back?
Each and every one of these came back through individuals either coming up to the gate or someone coming to the gate and telling us they knew a friend, and we'd get them to return these items to us.
Do you think these things that were removed were returned by the people who did it?
One of the upsides of the no questions asked policy is it promotes people to turn the things in. One of the downsides of the no questions asked policy is no questions asked. So I don't ask them how they got it. All I do is say thank you, you're wonderful, I really appreciate what you're doing. You want a cup of tea?
But there's a less welcome development too. Matt's found evidence of an inside job. The blueprint shows the layout of the museum's storage rooms. Only a few employees had access to these well-protected rooms.
This room, nothing is touched. This room, nothing is touched. This room, nothing is touched, except for in the far corner right there.
The rooms contain thousands of small but extremely valuable artifacts like these.
Some pendants, amulets, all smaller pieces. These are the most easily transportable, the most easily trafficable items in the museum.
Most of the objects are the highly collectible items archaeologists call cylinder seals.
And as you know, they're used almost as a signature stamp.
They were used throughout the ancient Near East to stamp their owners' signatures in sealing wax.
The individual or individuals who did this had to have had an intimate knowledge of both the museum and its storage procedures. There can be no other conclusion.
Because an ordinary person visiting the museum would have no knowledge that this would exist.
It would take you days to find this trove.
It's the biggest loss suffered by the museum. The market value of these pieces, up to $80,000 each.
That was a pretty brilliant theft.
It was a well-planned theft. I never call thieves brilliant. Thieves are just thieves.
There are no immediate plans to initiate criminal prosecutions, but much of the evidence assembled by Matt and his team has been posted on the internet.
How many do you think we've got recovered now? I know it's a fluid list and it's changing, but where do you think we're at?
Probably about 20%, 25%.
Illegal dealers are on notice. You trade in antiquities stolen from the Iraq Museum, and you'll face the consequences. And the progress doesn't end at the museum. Back at the bank, we cracked the toughest nut of all. One of our Iraqi pump operators has popped every manhole cover he can find, turning off every valve in sight. It works. There's no more floodwater entering the bank, and the water level at last is going down by as much as 5 feet a day. Soon, we may know the answer to our mystery. Is the treasure of Nimrud still inside the vaults, or is it lost forever? The floodwaters are in full retreat. We've cleared about 650,000 gallons of water out of the bank. Finally, we can see the doors of the vaults we've spent so much time trying to reach. They're straight out of central casting. So tough, they stood up to the impact of a rocket-propelled grenade fired at point-blank range. But there's still no guarantee the treasure of Nimrud is safe. 2 days before the bombing began, Saddam Hussein's youngest son came to the bank. He carried a blank check signed by his father. That night, his men returned. Saddam's final withdrawal was an unknown quantity of gold, plus a cool $800 million in cash. But did he also take the treasure of Nimrud? Bashir is a bank employee and a witness.
What did he see being taken from the vault?
ما شفتك من الخزنة.
ما فتحت هنا بس هذول كانوا مفتوحات قدام
Yeah.
بس 3 منهم مفتوحات الباقيات مغلوقات ما اعرف شنو بطن.
So when he went into the vault, he saw many boxes that had money in them that were closed. He also saw actual coffins that were open and they had layers of gold bars.
So real
inside
coffins.
And he's seen gold bars about that size.
Okay, and so in the load that Qusay and his people allegedly took out of the bank, did you see any museum pieces or the treasure of Nimrud?
هل شفت أي شيء من المتحف خاصة كنز نمرود? You saw nothing from the museum.
If Bashir's right, our search may not have been in vain. Beneath the street, the cleanup continues. Our search for the treasure of Nimrud has also had a remarkable, if unintended, consequence. Behind these bars is nothing less than Iraq's Federal Reserve. Millions of dollars and 40+ billion Iraqi dinars. Now, thanks to our pumping operation, that money is flowing into the Iraqi economy. According to bank officials, it'll be enough to meet the nation's payroll for 3 whole months.
We need this money to pay for the salaries. Even it was have some water, but we use it because there is no other solution.
The flooding was a big issue because it meant that we couldn't access a lot of the dinars that were located in the flooded vaults. And so thanks to you guys, we've now been able to open up the vaults, clear out the water, and access the sacks.
At last, we reach the final barrier. Behind this steel door is the vault where we hope the treasure of Nimrud is still stored. Did Saddam steal it? We'll know soon enough. Opening the safe is no easy matter, even if you have the combination and the keys. access is tightly controlled. Only a single camera monitors the action. At last, the door opens. A quick scan of the room, and then we spot them, the museum cases. There's no obvious damage, and the lock looks intact. But do they still contain the treasure of Nimrud? Now politics intrude. The cases can't be opened until everyone, the bank, the museum, and the Pentagon, have signed off on the deal. Then, and only then, can we finally break the seals.
I'm now joined in the studio by the man who got me into all of this, my producer, Jason Williams, the obsessed Jason Williams. All right, when we were there, they would not open the boxes. So what happens next?
We left essentially on the edge of our seats like everybody else. We did not know what was going to happen next. We had one last best chance. And I went to one of the investigators and said, would you like to take a camera? They did. They took a camera with them into the vault, and National Geographic now has those images.
That's right, and this is what they found.
The scene our loaned-out camera captures is a world exclusive. The museum cases need a little persuading before their contents can be revealed. First, a woman's face. Next, gold bars and a gold helmet. And as excitement grows, the bull's head from the golden harp of Ur. And then, at last, for the first time since the beginning of the first Gulf War, we see it. The treasure of Nimrud. Two wars and countless other dangers haven't dimmed the luster of its gold. Bowl after exquisite bowl, necklaces, massive armlets, all gleam as if the master goldsmith had just created them. Finally, as if to cap the moment, the ornate crown of a queen of Assyria is revealed. The treasure will be displayed at the Iraq Museum, an emblem of the glory of ancient Iraq.
Pretty incredible moment, huh? To learn more about National Geographic's archaeological expedition to Iraq, go to nationalgeographic.com. And that's it for this episode of Ultimate Explorer. I'm Lisa Ling. Thanks for coming along.